The runaway Omega thought she was safe, until the Alpha King knocked on her door, a full werewolf romance audiobook by Shadow Howl's Tale. Hey there, my incredible listeners. Welcome back to another spine-tingling werewolf shifter romance that's gonna keep you up way past your bedtime. I'm talking danger, secrets, and an alpha so powerful he rules an entire kingdom of wolves. I'm your host, and having you here makes this whole thing magical. Like howling at the moon with family you've never met but somehow always knew. Your support is everything. Every listen, every like, every comment. It's like finding your true mate in a world full of lone wolves. So tonight, we're diving deep into a story about survival, destiny, and a woman who thought she'd escaped her fate. We've got Alexander, the Alpha King, a ruler so commanding that even other alphas bow before him. And Catherine Simeon, an Omega on the run whose quiet refuge is about to be shattered by a knock at her door that will change everything. Get comfortable, grab your favorite blanket, maybe some snacks if you're settling in for the night, and let's sink our teeth into this delicious, dangerous tale. The moon is full, the stakes are higher than ever, and sometimes the thing you're running from is exactly what you need. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss a release. We drop these stories daily because I know you need your fix. And if you're vibing with the story, throw us a like. It helps more than you know. For my loyal crew, welcome home. Ready to run with the pack? Let's begin. Prologue. The Escape. The rain came down in sheets, turning the forest path into a treacherous ribbon of mud. Catherine Simeon stumbled through the darkness, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her sodden dress clinging to her legs like grasping hands trying to pull her back. Behind her, somewhere in the night, they were hunting. She could feel it, that primal awareness that came with being an Omega, that sixth sense that told her when predators were near. Her pack. The people who were supposed to protect her had become the very thing she needed to escape. You can't run from this, Catherine. Her father's words echoed in her memory, spoken just 3 days ago in his study. The Blackwood Pack has agreed to the union. You'll marry their alpha's son, and our alliance will be secured. She'd looked into her father's eyes then, searching for any hint of the man who'd once called her his little moonbeam, who'd carried her on his shoulders and promised she'd never have to be afraid. That man was gone, replaced by Alpha Simeon of the Riverside Pack, a leader who saw his Omega daughter as nothing more than a bargaining chip. He's a monster father, she'd whispered. Everyone knows what happened to his first Omega mate. Accidents happen, her father replied coldly. Sign the contract. But Catherine had seen the bruises on the visiting Omega servants from Blackwood territory. She'd heard the whispers of Connor Blackwood's temper, his cruelty, his view of Omegas as possessions rather than people. And she'd made a choice that would brand her as a traitor to her pack. She'd run. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest in stark white and shadow. Catherine pressed on, her wolf whimpering inside her, confused and frightened. Omegas weren't meant to be alone. They weren't built for it. Their wolves were gentler, their instincts geared toward nurturing and pack bonds rather than survival and isolation. But death would be lonelier still. A branch snapped behind her. Catherine's heart lurched, and she pushed herself faster, ignoring the burning in her lungs, the scratch of brambles against her skin. The forest grew denser here, the trees older, their branches forming a canopy so thick that even the rain struggled to penetrate. She'd been running for 3 days, stealing food from campsites, drinking from streams, moving always north toward the unclaimed territories, toward freedom, however cold and empty it might be. Another sound, closer this time. A howl that made her blood run cold. They'd shifted. The hunters were in wolf form now, faster and stronger than she could ever hope to be in her human body. Catherine's wolf surged forward, desperate to shift, to run properly. But Catherine held her back. Once she shifted, her scent would be unmistakable. They'd find her within minutes. She burst through a thicket and found herself at the edge of a steep ravine. The river below churned with runoff, swollen and dangerous. Behind her, golden eyes gleamed in the darkness. 3 wolves, their furs soaked, their teeth bared. Her father's enforcers. "Catherine!" The lead wolf shifted, his transformation fluid and practiced. Thomas Reed stood before her, naked and unconcerned, his beta authority radiating outward. "Enough of this foolishness. Come home." "I can't marry him," Catherine said. Her voice steady despite her terror. "I won't." "You don't have a choice," Thomas replied. "You're an Omega. You exist to serve your pack's needs." Something inside Catherine cracked. All her life, she'd been gentle, obedient, the perfect Omega daughter. She'd accepted the limitations placed on her, the constant monitoring, the decisions made without her input. But she would not accept this. "No," she said simply. Thomas's eyes flashed. "Take her." The wolves lunged. Catherine did the only thing she could. She jumped. The fall seemed to last forever, the world spinning in a chaos of dark water and darker sky. She hit the river with a force that drove the air from her lungs, the current immediately seizing her, pulling her under. Water filled her mouth, her nose, her screams silenced by the roar of the rapids. Catherine fought toward the surface, her limbs heavy, her dress like an anchor. Her head broke above water just long enough for one desperate breath before the river dragged her down again, tumbling her over rocks, smashing her against stones. She was going to die here. The thought was strangely peaceful, but her wolf wouldn't accept it. With a surge of primal will, Catherine's body began to shift, bones cracking and reforming even as the water battered her. Her dress tore away, and suddenly she was smaller, more streamlined, her wolf's instincts taking over. The she-wolf fought the current with everything she had, paddling desperately toward the bank. The world had narrowed to a single imperative: survive. When her paws finally scraped against mud, she pulled herself onto the shore with the last of her strength, collapsing in a heap of soaked fur and exhaustion. Above her, the storm continued its assault, but she was alive. Barely. For a long time, Catherine lay there, her wolf too tired to shift back, her human consciousness drifting in and out. When she finally opened her eyes again, dawn was breaking through the clouds, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. She was miles from where she'd jumped, miles from the hunters. In her weakened state, her scent would be diluted, harder to track. Catherine forced herself to her feet, her wolf's body trembling but functional. She had no plan beyond the next step, the next hour. But she was free. That would have to be enough. Chapter 1. 3 months later, Catherine needed to hurry, gather water, check her snares, and return to the cottage before darkness fell. 3 months in these woods, and still the isolation terrified her in ways the forest never could. Each day stretched longer than the last, each night a reminder that she was utterly, completely alone. The cottage she'd found was a miracle. Abandoned decades ago by some hermit or hunter, it sat in a small clearing deep in the unclaimed territories, far from any pack's borders. The roof leaked, the door hung crooked on its hinges, and mice had made nests in the walls. But it was a shelter. It was hers. Catherine had spent weeks making it livable, patching holes with moss and mud, scrubbing away years of dirt and decay. She'd found old blankets in a trunk, moth-eaten but still usable. A few rusted pots. A knife with a loose handle that she'd wrapped in strips of cloth. It wasn't much, but it was a life she'd chosen. The bucket in her hand sloshed as she walked the familiar path to the stream. Autumn was deepening into winter, and she'd need to prepare. Food preservation, firewood stockpiling, waterproofing every gap in the cottage walls. The work was endless and exhausting. But honestly, hers. She'd barely survived the first month. Omegas weren't meant for solitude, and her wolf had nearly driven her mad with loneliness. Howling internally for pack bonds that would never come. The absence of other wolves felt like a physical wound, a constant ache beneath her ribs. Slowly, though, she'd adapted. The desperate need had faded to a dull longing. She'd learned to hunt in her wolf form, to set snares, to identify edible plants. The skills her father had dismissed as unnecessary for an Omega had become her salvation. At the stream, Catherine knelt carefully, mindful of the bank's mud. The water ran clear and cold, fed by mountain springs. She'd been lucky to find this place. Fresh water, game in the forest, enough isolation to stay hidden. As she dipped her bucket, a sound made her freeze. Humming. Someone was humming a melody just upstream. Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs. In 3 months, she'd seen no one, heard nothing but animals and wind. The unclaimed territories were supposed to be empty, avoided by packs due to the lack of resources and the harsh terrain. Slowly, she rose and moved toward the sound, staying low, using the undergrowth for cover. Around a bend in the stream, she found the source. An old woman sat on a flat rock, her feet dangling in the water, her gray hair braided down her back. She wore simple homespun clothing and was washing what looked like root vegetables in a basket beside her. "You can come out, child," the woman said without turning. "I've known you were there since you left your cottage." Catherine's breath caught. "How?" "These are my woods." The woman finally looked at her, and Catherine felt the weight of ancient eyes. Eyes that had seen more than any normal human should. "I'm Vera. I've lived here longer than these trees have stood. And you're the runaway Omega who's been living in my husband's old hunting cottage." There was no accusation in her voice, just a statement of fact. Catherine stepped into the open, her hand instinctively moving to the knife at her belt. "I'm sorry," Catherine said. "I didn't know anyone claimed this territory. I'll leave." "Nonsense." Vera turned back to her washing. "I said these are my woods, not that you need to leave. It's nice to have a neighbor after all these years, even one who's clearly running from something." Catherine said nothing. The old woman continued humming, unconcerned. "The question is," Vera said after a moment, "are you running from something bad or toward something worse?" "I don't understand." "These territories are unclaimed for a reason, child. They sit between 3 great packs, Riverside to the south, Blackwood to the east, and Silvercrest to the north. But there's something else here, something older, something that doesn't take kindly to trespassers." A chill ran down Catherine's spine. "What do you mean?" The shadow wolves, Vera said simply. The first pack, the old blood. They don't follow the same rules as modern wolves. Don't claim territory the same way. But they're here, in these woods, and they've been watching you since the day you arrived. Catherine's mouth went dry. Why haven't they killed you? Vera smiled. Perhaps they're curious. Or perhaps they're waiting for something. The shadow wolves are particular about who they allow in their domain. I haven't seen any other wolves, Catherine protested. They don't want to be seen. Not yet. Vera stood, gathering her basket. But you will, child. Oh, you will, especially now. What do you mean, especially now? The old woman's expression grew serious. Because your father has called in a favor. The Blackwood Pack is no longer just looking for you. They've enlisted the help of someone far more dangerous. Alexander. The name meant nothing to Catherine. Who? The Alpha King, Vera interrupted. The only wolf powerful enough to rule over multiple packs. He arrives in these woods tomorrow, and he's agreed to find you and return you to Blackwood territory. For a price, of course. Alexander always extracts a price. Catherine felt the world tilt beneath her feet. An Alpha King. She'd heard rumors of such beings, wolves so powerful they transcended normal pack hierarchy, but she'd thought them myths. I have to run, Catherine whispered. I have to leave now. You can try, Vera said, not unkindly. But Alexander doesn't fail, child. Once he's accepted a hunt, the prey is already caught. The only question is how long the chase will last. She started to walk away, then paused. Though if I were you, I'd prepare the cottage for a guest. Sometimes the thing you're running from is exactly what you need to stop running from everything else. With that cryptic statement, the old woman disappeared into the trees, leaving Catherine alone with the sound of rushing water and her thundering heart. Chapter 2. The Arrival. Catherine didn't sleep that night. She sat by the cottage's small window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the tree line for any sign of movement. Her hands trembled around the cup of herb tea she'd made. Chamomile and valerian root, meant to calm nerves. It wasn't working. An Alpha King coming for her. Tomorrow. Today. The sun had risen hours ago, though heavy clouds made it feel more like dusk. Catherine had tried to keep busy, reinforcing the door, organizing her meager supplies, anything to keep her mind occupied. But her wolf paced restlessly beneath her skin, agitated and fearful. Around noon, the forest went silent. Catherine froze, her hand stilling on the pot she'd been scrubbing. The constant background noise, birds, insects, the rustle of small animals, cut off as if someone had closed a door on the world. He was here. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to shift and bolt into the trees, but Vera's words echoed in her mind. Alexander doesn't fail. Once he's accepted a hunt, the prey is already caught. If she ran, he'd chase. And something told Catherine that running from an Alpha King would only trigger predatory instincts better left undisturbed. So she waited, forcing herself to breathe steadily, to project calm even as terror threatened to overwhelm her. The knock, when it came, was gentle, almost polite. 3 measured raps against the warped wooden door. Catherine's laugh came out strangled and slightly hysterical. She'd imagined threats, demands, the door being torn from its hinges. Not courtesy. Miss Simeon, a voice called from outside. Deep, rich, commanding, but without aggression. I know you're inside. I can hear your heartbeat from here. Catherine's throat went dry. Slowly she stood, her legs shaking. She'd faced this moment in her nightmares for 3 months. Hunters finding her, being dragged back. But somehow the reality was both worse and different than she'd imagined. "What do you want?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "To talk, nothing more, I promise." "Forgive me if I don't trust the promises of someone hired to hunt me." A pause, then, surprisingly, a low chuckle. "Fair enough, but I'm not going to break down your door, Catherine. May I call you Catherine?" The use of her first name, informal and oddly intimate, made something flutter in her chest. "You can call me whatever you want. You're going to drag me back to Blackwood territory anyway." "Actually," the voice said, "I'd like to discuss that, but I'd prefer not to have this conversation through a door. I give you my word as an Alpha King. You're safe from harm in my presence. For now." For now. The qualifier was probably meant to be honest rather than threatening, but it sent a chill down Catherine's spine anyway. Against every survival instinct, Catherine reached for the door. Her hand hesitated on the latch. "How do I know you won't just grab me the moment I open this?" "Because I don't need to." There was no arrogance in the statement, just fact. "If I wanted to take you by force, Catherine, this conversation would already be over. I'm choosing to give you the courtesy of discussion. That should tell you something." It did. It told her that this Alexander was either supremely confident or genuinely different from the alphas she'd known. Possibly both. Taking a deep breath, Catherine pulled the door open. The man standing on her doorstep stole the air from her lungs. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with broad shoulders that filled the doorway. Dark hair fell to his collar, slightly disheveled as if he'd been running through the forest. But it was his face that held her captive. Sharp features that managed to be both aristocratic and wild. A strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes. His eyes were the impossible amber of a wolf's, but somehow more intense, more aware. They held hers with an intelligence and depth that made her feel utterly transparent, as if he could see through flesh and bone to the terrified woman beneath. He wore dark clothes, simple but well-made, the kind that allowed easy movement. No pack insignia, no obvious weapons. But he didn't need them. Power radiated from him like heat from a fire, an almost physical presence that made her wolf whimper and press itself flat in submission. This was an Alpha King, and Catherine understood, suddenly and completely, why that title carried weight. "Catherine Simeon," he said, "so," and her name and his voice did something strange to her insides. "I'm Alexander. May I come in?" She should say no, should slam the door and pray he'd respect it. But something in his expression, curiosity perhaps, or genuine patience, made her step back. "I suppose you will anyway if I refuse." "I would," he agreed, stepping over the threshold. "But I'd prefer your permission." He had to duck slightly to clear the doorframe, and once inside, he made the small cottage feel even smaller. He dominated the space not through aggression but simple presence, as if the room itself rearranged around him. His gaze swept the interior, taking in the patched walls, the meager possessions, the single chair by the fire. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "You've done well for yourself," he said. 3 months alone in unclaimed territory. No pack bonds, no support structure. Most Omegas would have died or gone mad. "I'm stronger than I look." Catherine kept the table between them, her hand near the knife she'd left there. Alexander noticed. His lips quivered in what might have been amusement. "I'm not gonna hurt you, Catherine." Just drag me back to marry a monster. Much better. The amusement faded. Tell me about Connor Blackwood. The question caught her off guard. What? I want to hear your side. Why did you run? Catherine laughed bitterly. You know why. My father sold me to seal an alliance, and Connor Blackwood has a reputation for breaking his Omega mates. Reputation isn't always reality. His first wife died 6 months after their bonding. The second ran away and was never found. The third, Catherine's hands clenched. The third didn't die, but I've seen what's left of her. She lives in the Blackwood Omega house, and she doesn't speak, doesn't meet anyone's eyes. She's a ghost in her own body. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. And your father ignored this. My father considers me property, a tool for making alliances. He doesn't care what happens to the tool after it's served its purpose. All alphas are not like your father. No? Catherine met his eyes, anger finally breaking through her fear. Then why are you here? I'm an Omega who fled an unwanted bond. By every pack law, that's my right. But here you stand ready to drag me back because someone paid you enough. How is that different? Alexander's expression didn't change, but something in his scent shifted. A note of what might have been regret. You're right, it isn't. The admission shocked her into silence. I accepted this contract before I knew the full situation, Alexander continued. Your father told me you'd been stolen by rogues, that you needed rescue. It wasn't until I reached Riverside territory yesterday and spoke with others that I learned the truth. And you're still here. I'm still here, he agreed. Because I gave my word to complete the contract, and an Alpha King's word is binding. But he held up a hand as Catherine started to protest. There are different ways to fulfill a contract. I agreed to find Catherine Simeon and ensure her return to Blackwood territory. I've found you. The return, however, could be negotiated. Hope flickered in Catherine's chest. Dangerous and desperate. What do you mean? Sit, Alexander said, gesturing to the chair. Please, let's discuss this like civilized wolves rather than hunter and prey. Catherine hesitated, then slowly sank into the chair, her body tense and ready to bolt. Alexander remained standing, though he moved to the side, giving her a clear path to the door. The gesture wasn't lost on her. He was deliberately not trapping her. Pack law is complicated, Alexander began, especially regarding omegas and unwanted bondings. Technically, yes, you have the right to refuse. But your father has the right to challenge that refusal if he believes it's against pack interest. Which he did. He called for an alpha's judgment. And as the ruling alpha of Riverside Pack, his judgment stands, unless overruled by a higher authority. Catherine's pulse quickened. You. Me, Alexander confirmed. An Alpha King's word supersedes individual pack alphas in matters of inter-pack relations. This situation, your father bargaining you to Blackwood Pack, qualifies. So you could just stop this? I could. His amber eyes held hers. But there would be consequences. Your father would lose face. The alliance with Blackwood would crumble. And you, Catherine, would need protection. Because Connor Blackwood doesn't strike me as the type to accept rejection gracefully. The hope in her chest withered. So I'm trapped either way. Not trapped, but you need to understand what you're asking for. Freedom always has a price. Catherine stood abruptly, turning away from those two perceptive eyes. Then what are my options? Marry a man who will break me or spend my life running? There's a third option. Something in his voice made her turn back. Alexander was watching her with an intensity that raised goosebumps on her arms. What option? Stay here, under my protection. Catherine's breath caught. I don't understand. These are unclaimed territories, yes, but that's about to change. Alexander moved to the window, looking out at the forest. I've been watching these lands for years. The shadow wolves who dwell here, you've heard of them? Vera's warning echoed in her mind. I've heard. They're the oldest pack in existence, ancient bloodlines going back to the first wolves. They don't involve themselves in modern pack politics, but they're still powerful, still dangerous. He turned back to her. And they've agreed to accept me as their alpha. Catherine's eyes widened. The Shadow Wolves accepted an outsider as their leader? I'm not entirely an outsider. My bloodline traces back to theirs generations ago, and I've proven myself worthy. There was no boasting in his voice, just a statement of fact. Within a month, this territory will officially become Silvercrest Pack lands under my rule. And you want me to... what, join your pack? I want to offer you a choice. Alexander moved closer, though he stopped several feet away, respecting her space. Stay here under my protection. Refuse the bonding to Connor Blackwood. I'll handle the political fallout with your father and the Blackwood pack. It sounded too good to be true. Catherine searched his face for deception, for the catch she knew had to exist. Why would you do that? Because you remind me of someone. A shadow crossed his expression. My sister. She was Omega, like you. And my father tried to force a bonding she didn't want. She ran like you. But no one protected her. No one offered her a third option. What happened to her? She's safe now, happy, living with a pack that values her for who she is, not what she can give them. His eyes met hers. I swore after her ordeal that I'd never let another Omega be trapped that way. Not if I had the power to prevent it. Catherine wanted to believe him, desperately, but years of disappointment and betrayal had taught her caution. What's the price, Alexander? You said to yourself, freedom always has a price. A smile ghosted across his lips. Clever Omega, yes, there's a price. You'd be joining my pack, which means accepting my authority as alpha. You'd need to contribute to pack welfare. I understand you've developed hunting and survival skills. Those would be valuable. That's it? Just be a pack member? Just be a pack member, he confirmed. No forced bondings, no using you as a political pawn. You'd have the same rights and protections as any wolf under my rule. It was everything she'd wanted. Everything she dreamed of during 3 months of isolation. A pack without the suffocation she'd felt in Riverside. Protection without the terror of Blackwood. There has to be more, Catherine insisted. You're an alpha king. You don't make offers like this out of simple kindness. Alexander's expression grew serious. You're right. There is one more thing. He moved closer. Close enough that Catherine could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell his scent, pine and snow and something wild that made her wolf stir with interest. What? She whispered. I need you to trust me, he said simply. To believe that not all alphas are like your father. To give me a chance to prove that power doesn't have to mean cruelty, that protection doesn't require possession. Catherine stared at him, this impossible man who'd tracked her through the wilderness, who'd knocked politely on her door, who stood before her offering not threats, but choices. And if I say no, she asked, if I refuse your offer and demand you honor my right to live here alone? Alexander's jaw tightened. Then I'll leave. I'll tell your father and Connor Blackwood that you fell in the river during my pursuit. I'll give you the freedom you want." He paused. "But you should know, Catherine, that loneliness kills Omegas just as surely as cruelty. Maybe slower, but just as permanently. You might survive physically in isolation, but your wolf won't. Eventually, the lack of pack bonds will break something inside you that can't be fixed." The word struck home because Catherine had already felt it. That slow erosion of self, the growing disconnect between human and wolf, the way loneliness had begun to feel like a physical weight crushing her chest. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked. "The sun sets in 4 hours. I need an answer before then." "Why?" "Because Connor Blackwood's hunting party reaches the border of this territory at nightfall. They're coming for you, Catherine, with or without my permission. And if you're not under my official protection by then, if you're not formally a member of my pack, I can't stop them from taking you." Catherine's blood ran cold. "They followed you. They tried. I made it difficult." A dangerous smile crossed Alexander's face. "But Connor is determined. Obsessed, perhaps. He views you as his property, stolen from him, and he has 30 wolves at his back." 30? Catherine's legs weakened. "I can't fight 30 wolves." "No," Alexander agreed. "But I can, if you're mine to protect." There it was, the real choice. Trust this alpha king she'd just met, join his pack and place her life in his hands, or face Connor Blackwood and his hunters alone. Not much of a choice at all, really. "I need time to think," Catherine said, though they both knew what her answer would be. Alexander nodded. "I'll be outside. I won't leave the clearing, but I'll give you space." He moved toward the door, then paused on the threshold. "For what it's worth, Catherine, I think you're extraordinarily brave. Running from everything you knew, surviving alone, refusing to accept a fate others tried to force on you. That takes strength most wolves never develop." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Catherine alone with her racing thoughts and the impossible decision that wasn't really a decision at all. Chapter 3. The Choice. Catherine sat in her chair for exactly 10 minutes after Alexander left, staring at her shaking hands. Then she rose and began to pace, her mind whirling with possibilities and consequences. Trust him. Don't trust him. Join his pack. Stay alone. Live under protection. Risk death for freedom. Every option terrified her in different ways. Through the window, she could see Alexander standing at the edge of the clearing, his back to the cottage, hands clasped behind him. He'd removed his jacket despite the cold, as if the temperature didn't affect him. Probably it didn't. Alpha kings weren't bound by the same limitations as ordinary wolves. Catherine's wolf stirred restlessly, torn between fear and fascination. Something about Alexander called to her on a level she didn't understand. Not the forced pull of a bonding, but something more subtle. Recognition, perhaps, of an alpha who might actually be worthy of the title. A knock at the door made her jump, but it wasn't Alexander. "May an old woman come in from the cold?" Vera's voice called. Catherine hurried to open the door. The old woman stepped inside, brushing snow from her shawl. When had it started snowing? "I thought you might need some perspective," Vera said, settling herself in the chair without invitation. "And some tea. You look half frozen, child." Catherine automatically moved to the hearth, putting the kettle on to boil. The familiar motions helped calm her racing thoughts. "Did Alexander send you?" That one? No, he's too busy brooding dramatically in your clearing to think of practical things like advice. Vera pulled out a small pouch from her pocket. Here, add this to the tea. It'll help clear your mind. Catherine accepted the pouch, sniffing cautiously. Herbs she recognized, peppermint, sage, something else she couldn't identify. What is it? Clarity Blend. Won't make the decision for you, but it'll help you hear your own thoughts over the fear. They sat in silence while the water heated. Catherine caught herself looking out the window again, watching Alexander's still figure. He hadn't moved, hadn't turned to look at the cottage. True to his word, giving her space. You're wondering if you can trust him, Vera said, reading her thoughts with uncanny accuracy. If his promises are real, or if he's just another alpha who'll use you for his own ends. Aren't they all like that? Catherine asked bitterly. My father, Connor Blackwood, every alpha I've ever known, they all see omegas as tools, pretty things to trade and use and discard. Most, yes. Vera accepted the tea Catherine poured, cradling the warm cup in gnarled hands. But not all. Alexander is different. How do you know him? The Shadow Wolves are old, TCA child. We remember things others have forgotten, and we've been watching Alexander since he was a pup. Vera's eyes took on a distant quality. His father was a cruel man, ruled his pack with fear and violence, made examples of anyone who questioned his authority. Catherine settled on the floor by the hearth, drawn in despite herself. What happened? Alexander happened. He was barely 20 when he challenged his father for alpha status. No one thought he'd win. His father was in his prime, vicious and experienced. But Alexander fought him anyway, for his sister and for every other wolf his father had brutalized. He won. He destroyed him. Vera's voice was quiet. Completely. Left him alive but broken, stripped of rank and power. Then Alexander restructured the entire pack, changed laws, banned forced bondings, gave omegas rights they'd never had before. Within 5 years, his pack was the most stable, most prosperous in the region. That's why he's called Alpha King. Partly. The title came later, when 5 other packs asked him to arbitrate their disputes. He was so effective, so fair in his judgments, that they began deferring to his authority. Now he's recognized by over 20 packs as a neutral mediator and ultimate authority. Catherine absorbed this, trying to reconcile the image of a revolutionary alpha with the man standing in her clearing. That doesn't mean he'll keep his promises to me. No, Vera agreed, but consider this. Alexander didn't have to come here personally. He could have sent soldiers, had you dragged back in chains, and collected his payment without breaking a sweat. Instead, he knocked on your door, asked to talk, offered you choices. He said his word is binding. It is. An Alpha King who broke his promises wouldn't stay Alpha King long. His entire authority rests on other packs trusting his judgment, his fairness, his honor. If he tells you he'll protect you, he will, or die trying. The certainty in Vera's voice should have been comforting. Instead, it made Catherine's chest tighten. What if I don't want to be protected? What if I just want to be left alone? Then you'll die, Vera said bluntly. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually, loneliness or hunters or simple bad luck will kill you. Wolves aren't meant to be solitary creatures, Catherine. We need a pack. It's written into our bones. Catherine pressed her hands against her eyes, fighting back tears. I'm so tired, Vera. Tired of alphas deciding my fate. Tired of running. Tired of being afraid. I know, child. The old woman's voice softened. But there's a difference between being tired and being defeated. You ran from your father and from Connor Blackwood because you refused to accept defeat. Don't accept it now just because you're exhausted. What are you saying? I'm saying that accepting help isn't the same as surrendering. That choosing protection isn't the same as choosing captivity. Vera stood, moving to the window. Look at him out there. He could force you right now. Could shift and drag you back to Blackwood territory, collect his payment, and never think of you again. But he's standing in the snow, giving you time to choose. That should tell you something about his character. Catherine joined her at the window. Alexander had shifted his position slightly, now facing the tree line, alert and watchful. Protecting her even now, she realized, standing guard against whatever might come from the forest. The Shadow Wolves trust him, Vera continued. We don't trust easily. We've seen too many alphas rise and fall, watched too many promises turn to ash. But Alexander, he earned our respect, our loyalty. We chose him as our alpha because we knew he'd never abuse that power. You make him sound like a saint. Oh, he's not, Vera laughed. He's ruthless when he needs to be, deadly in combat, and he has a temper that could scorch stone. But he's fair, he keeps his word, and he protects what's his with a ferocity that borders on obsessive. Something in that last statement made Catherine's pulse quicken. What do you mean? I mean that if you accept his protection, if you become part of his pack, Alexander won't let anyone harm you. Not Connor Blackwood, not your father, not anyone. Vera's eyes gleamed. He's already decided you're worth protecting, Catherine. The only question is whether you're brave enough to accept it. That's not fair. Life rarely is. But you have a choice in front of you, which is more than most Omegas get. The question is, what will you do with it? Catherine turned away from the window, her mind finally, painfully settling on a decision. If I join his pack, I won't be like I was in Riverside, meek and obedient and accepting whatever scraps of dignity they throw me. Good, Vera said firmly. Alexander doesn't want submission. He wants pack members who can think for themselves, who'll challenge him when he's wrong, who'll stand strong rather than break under pressure. You've already proven you're capable of that. What if it's a mistake? What if I'm trading one cage for another? Then you'll know you tried, that you fought for something better, and if it doesn't work... Vera shrugged. Alexander isn't your father. He won't stop you from leaving if that's truly what you want. Catherine absorbed this, feeling the weight of decision finally crystallizing into certainty. It wasn't the choice she'd wanted. She'd wanted complete freedom, perfect solitude, a life accountable to no one. But Vera was right. That life would kill her, slowly but inevitably. This, Alexander's offer, was a compromise, but perhaps a livable one. Thank you, Catherine said quietly, for the tea, for the advice. Thank the Shadow Wolves, child. We don't often involve ourselves in pack politics, but you... Vera smiled mysteriously. You're special. The forest knows it. The old magic recognizes it. And Alexander feels it, even if he doesn't understand why yet. Before Catherine could ask what that meant, Vera moved to the door. I'll leave you to tell him your decision, but Catherine, when Connor Blackwood arrives, stay inside. What's about to happen isn't for Omega eyes. The old woman disappeared into the falling snow, leaving Catherine alone with her choice and the man waiting outside to hear it. Catherine took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and opened the door. Alexander turned the moment the door opened, his amber eyes finding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Snowflakes had settled in his dark hair, melting against the heat of his skin. Catherine, he said simply, waiting. I accept, she said, the words coming out stronger than she felt. Your protection, your pack, all of it. Something flickered in his expression. Relief, satisfaction, something deeper she couldn't name. He moved toward her with fluid grace, stopping just at the threshold. You're certain. Once you accept pack bonds with me, they can't easily be broken. You'll be mine to protect, and I'll be yours to rely on. It's not a casual connection. I'm certain, Catherine lifted her chin. But I have conditions. One dark eyebrow rose. Conditions? I won't be treated like property. I won't be married off or used as a bargaining chip. And I want to learn to fight properly. No more running. No more being helpless. A slow smile spread across Alexander's face, transforming his features from merely handsome to devastating. Done. All of it. I expected nothing less from someone who survived 3 months alone. He extended his hand, palm up. Then let's make it official. A pack bond requires physical contact and willing acceptance from both parties. Take my hand, Catherine, and accept me as your alpha. I, in turn, accept you as a member of Silvercrest Pack with all the rights and protections that entails. Catherine hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, strong, careful not to grip too hard. The moment their skin touched, something electric passed between them. A bond snapped into place. Catherine gasped as warmth flooded through her. A golden connection forming between her consciousness and his. Not invasive, not controlling, more like a thread of awareness, letting her sense his presence, his emotions. Protection. Satisfaction. A fierce possessiveness that should have frightened her but somehow felt right. Her wolf, silent and wary for months, suddenly sang with joy. Pack Alpha. Home. Alexander's eyes widened slightly, as if he felt it too. This connection that seemed deeper, more intimate than a typical pack bond should be. His hand tightened on hers. Catherine, he said, his voice rougher. What? A howl cut through the snowy afternoon. Then another, and another. Alexander's expression shifted instantly, going from confused wonder to deadly focus. He released her hand, though something in his eyes said he did so reluctantly. They're here, he said. Connor's hunting party, earlier than I expected. Catherine's new pack sense let her feel Alexander's emotions. Anticipation, anger, a predatory readiness that made her shiver. This was the Alpha King, the warrior, the wolf who'd destroyed his own father in combat. Go inside, Alexander commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. Bar the door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. But, Catherine. He cupped her face with one hand, the gesture surprisingly gentle. You're mine to protect now. Let me do it, please. The please convinced her more than the command. Catherine nodded and stepped back into the cottage. As she closed the door, she saw Alexander's form blur and shift, his human body transforming into something massive and powerful. The wolf that emerged was larger than any she'd ever seen. Easily the size of a small horse, with midnight black fur that seemed to absorb light. His eyes, still that impossible amber, fixed on the tree line where shadows moved between the trees. Catherine barred the door with shaking hands, then moved to the window. She knew she should hide, should cover her ears and pretend whatever was about to happen wasn't happening. But she was done hiding. Through the window, she watched as wolves emerged from the forest. 30 of them, just as Alexander had said, ranging in size and color, but all focused on one thing, the massive black wolf standing between them and the cottage. One wolf, larger than the rest with russet-colored fur, stepped forward. Even from a distance, Catherine could feel the malevolence radiating from him. Connor Blackwood. He shifted mid-stride, his transformation fluid. The man who stood before Alexander was handsome in a brutal way, all hard edges and cold eyes. He wore expensive clothes that looked incongruous in the snowy forest. "Alexander," Connor said, his voice carrying in the still air, "I should have known you'd be here, playing hero for some runaway Omega." "This territory is under my protection," Alexander's voice rang out, deeper and more resonant in his shifted form. A hybrid between wolf and man that Catherine hadn't known was possible. "The Omega Catherine Simeon has accepted pack bonds with Silvercrest. She's under my authority now." Convenient timing. Connor's smile was a slash of white in his cold face. "Tell me, did she beg prettily when you found her? Offer anything you wanted in exchange for protection?" A growl rumbled from Alexander's chest, so deep Catherine felt it in her bones even through the cottage walls. "Mind your words, Blackwood. She's pack now. Insult her, and you insult me." "Pack," Connor laughed. "You mean property. Don't dress it up in noble language, Alexander. We both know what this is. You claimed her first, so now she's yours instead of mine. Alpha privilege." "You know nothing." Alexander's voice dropped to something dangerous. "I don't claim wolves. They choose me. Catherine chose freedom from you." "Freedom?" Connor's expression darkened. "She's an Omega. She doesn't get to choose. Her father signed a contract, accepted payment. She's mine by right. Rights can be challenged. I challenge them now, as Alpha King, on grounds that the bonding was unwilling and would result in harm to the Omega in question." The other wolves shifted restlessly. This was pack law territory, formal and binding. Connor's face flushed with anger. "You have no proof of potential harm." "I have 3 dead Omegas." Alexander stepped forward, his larger form making Connor step back despite himself. 3 mates, Connor, all dead or destroyed within a year of bonding to you. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. Accidents, weakness, not my fault they couldn't handle your abuse? Alexander's voice cracked like a whip. "I've investigated, Connor, spoken to survivors, to witnesses. You're a sadist who breaks anything softer than yourself. And you wanted Catherine because she's particularly gentle, particularly breakable." Connor's mask slipped, revealing something ugly beneath. "So what if I did? Omegas exist to serve alphas. If they break, there are always more." Catherine pressed her hand against her mouth, horrified. This was what her father had sold her to. This was the future she'd fled. Alexander's form rippled, his control clearly strained. "Last chance, Blackwood. Leave. Now. Acknowledge Catherine as Silvercrest Pack and under my protection. I'll even return your payment to Alpha Simeon." "Or what?" Connor sneered. "You'll fight me? You and what army, Alexander? I have 30 wolves. You have 1 runaway Omega." "I have the Shadow Wolves." As if his words were a signal, the forest came alive. Wolves emerged from every shadow, every gap between trees. Not 30, but hundreds. Their fur ranged from silver to gray to black, their eyes all gleaming with ancient intelligence. The Shadow Wolves, answering their new alpha's call. Connor's face went white. His hunting party drew together, suddenly aware they were massively outnumbered. "This territory belongs to Silvercrest now," Alexander continued, his voice carrying absolute authority. "And every wolf in it is under my protection. You have no claim here, Blackwood. Take your hunters and leave." For a moment, Catherine thought Connor would back down. Then she saw his expression shift, rage overcoming reason. His hand moved to his belt, drawing a knife. "If I can't have her," Connor snarled, "no one will." He moved fast, faster than Catherine expected, shifting mid-stride and launching himself not at Alexander but past him, toward the cottage. Toward her. Alexander's roar shook the clearing. He was faster. The two wolves collided midair in an explosion of fur and fangs. They hit the ground rolling, snapping and clawing, both fighting with lethal intent. Connor was good. Catherine could see that. Fast and vicious, with years of combat experience. But Alexander was better. It was like watching a storm fight a candle flame. Every move Connor made, Alexander countered. Every attack was turned aside, redirected, punished. Within seconds, Alexander had Connor pinned, jaws locked around his throat, one massive paw on his chest. Catherine couldn't breathe. One bite and it would be over. The clearing had gone absolutely silent. Connor's hunting party stood frozen, aware that any move might trigger their alpha's death. The shadow wolves watched, waiting for Alexander's decision. Slowly, Alexander released his grip on Connor's throat. But he didn't move back, keeping Connor pinned. "You have a choice," Alexander said. That did, his voice deadly calm. "Acknowledge Catherine as beyond your reach, apologize to her for your threat, and leave with your life. Or die here in the snow, your pack leaderless, and I'll claim Blackwood territory as recompense for your attack on my pack member." Connor's eyes blazed with hatred, but he wasn't stupid. Beaten and humiliated, facing death, he did the only thing he could. "I acknowledge Catherine Simeon as Silvercrest pack," he ground out. "Beyond my claim." "And?" Connor's jaw clenched. "I apologize for my threat." Alexander held him there a moment longer, making sure the lesson sank in. Then he stepped back, allowing Connor to rise. The Blackwood Alpha shifted to human form, naked and bleeding from a dozen wounds. His pride as damaged as his body. "Go," Alexander commanded. "If you or any of your pack sets foot in this territory again without permission, I'll kill you. That's not a threat, Blackwood. It's a promise." Connor gathered his hunting party with a gesture, and they melted into the forest, leaving only trampled snow and blood behind. The moment they were gone, Alexander shifted back to human form. He stood there in the falling snow, also naked, also bleeding, his chest heaving with exertion. But his eyes went immediately to the cottage, finding Catherine in the window. She'd never seen anything more beautiful or terrifying than Alexander in that moment. A king who'd just defended his territory, his pack, her, with lethal efficiency and absolute control. He'd kept his promise. She was safe. Catherine opened the door before she could think better of it, stepping out into the snow despite the cold. Alexander turned fully toward her, and she saw the concern that flooded his expression. "Are you all right?" he asked, moving toward her. "Did he frighten you?" "I'm fine," Catherine said, and meant it. That was necessary," Alexander finished. He stopped a few feet away, suddenly seeming aware of his nakedness. A slight flush colored his cheeks, the first sign of embarrassment she'd seen from him. "I should... clothes." Despite everything, Catherine laughed. The mighty Alpha King, who just defeated an enemy and commanded hundreds of wolves, was blushing because he was naked in front of her. "There's a blanket inside," she said, smiling. "Though honestly, after everything that just happened, that's the least shocking thing I've seen today." Alexander's lips quirked. "Fair point." But he accepted the blanket she retrieved, wrapping it around his waist. His wounds were already healing. Alpha regeneration was remarkable. "Thank you," Catherine said quietly, "for keeping your promise." "Always," Alexander replied, his amber eyes intense. "Your pack now, Catherine, mine to protect. I don't take that responsibility lightly." Something about the way he said, "mine," made her shiver, not with fear, but with something warmer, more dangerous. The bond between them hummed with awareness, with possibilities she wasn't ready to examine. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Alexander looked around the clearing, at the shadow wolves still watching from the trees, at the cottage that had been her sanctuary. "Now we go home. To Silvercrest territory. Your territory now. I'll send wolves to collect your belongings." "Just like that? I just leave?" "Unless you want to stay in this cottage." Alexander's expression softened. "But Catherine, you don't have to hide anymore. You're free, truly free. Under my protection, no one can force you into anything. You can build whatever life you want." Free. The word tasted strange, unfamiliar. For 3 months, freedom had meant isolation and fear. But now freedom meant something different. It meant belonging without captivity, protection without possession. A pack that chose her as much as she chose them. "Okay," Catherine said, decision crystallizing. "Let's go home." Alexander's smile could have lit the darkening sky. "Welcome to Silvercrest, Catherine Simeon. Welcome home." Chapter 4. Silvercrest. The journey to Silvercrest territory took 2 days. Alexander had offered to let Catherine ride while he ran alongside in wolf form, but she'd refused. If she was going to be pack, she needed to prove she could keep up. So she shifted, the first time she'd let her wolf fully free since arriving in the unclaimed territories, and ran. It was glorious. Her wolf sang with joy, reveling in the pack bonds that surrounded them, the dozens of shadow wolves running with them through the forest. Catherine had never experienced anything like it. This sense of belonging, of rightness, of finally being where she was meant to be. Alexander ran beside her, his massive black form easily matching her pace. Through their bond, she could feel his satisfaction, his protectiveness, and something else, a warmth that felt almost like pride. "You're faint." His voice came through the pack bond, the mental connection that allowed shifted wolves to communicate. "Faster than most omegas." "I've had practice running for my life," Catherine replied, injecting dark humor into the thought. "No more." Alexander's response was firm. No more running. Not from anyone. They stopped for the night in a sheltered valley. The shadow wolves made camp with practiced efficiency, fire starting, food appearing, sleeping areas being prepared. Catherine watched in amazement as the pack moved together like a single organism, everyone knowing their role, everyone contributing. "It's different from Riverside," she murmured to Alexander as they sat by the fire, sharing a meal of roasted rabbit. "How so?" There, omegas were kept separate, saying, protected, they called it, but really it was just controlling. We weren't allowed to hunt, to patrol, to do anything that might be seen as an alpha's role. Catherine tore off a piece of meat. "Here, everyone just works together." Strength doesn't come from a wolf's designation, Alexander said. It comes from their character, their skills, their willingness to support the pack. An omega who can hunt is more valuable than an alpha who can't. Simple logic. Not to most packs. Most packs are led by idiots. Alexander's blunt statement made Catherine choke on her water. He grinned. What? It's true. The obsession with alpha dominance, omega submission, it's outdated thinking that weakens everyone. A pack is strongest when every member can contribute their best skills, regardless of designation. Catherine studied him in the firelight, this alpha who seemed to break every rule she'd ever known. How did you become like this? Most alphas are raised to believe in the hierarchy, in their natural superiority. Alexander's expression darkened. I watched my father destroy good wolves because they weren't alpha enough. I watched him brutalize my sister because she dared to love someone he hadn't chosen. Watched him turn our pack into a prison where fear was the only currency that mattered. But you stopped him. Eventually. Not soon enough to save everyone he hurt, but... Alexander's jaw tightened. I swore when I took the alpha position that Silvercrest would be different. That every wolf would have value, would have rights, would have the freedom to choose their own path within pack law. Is that why so many packs defer to you? Partly. Also because I'm very good at killing people who threaten what's mine. His grin was all teeth. The velvet glove needs an iron fist, or other alphas think you're weak. Catherine shouldn't have found that attractive. She'd spent her life afraid of alpha aggression, of violence disguised as strength. But there was something different about Alexander's brand of danger. It was controlled, purposeful, directed outward to protect rather than inward to control. What was the Shadow Wolf's test? She asked, changing the subject. You said they tested you before accepting you as alpha. Alexander's expression grew distant. The Shadow Wolves are old, Catherine, ancient. They don't think like modern packs. They see things, and know things, that the rest of us have forgotten. Their test wasn't about strength or dominance. Then what? Worthiness. They have a sacred place, deep in their oldest territory. A pool fed by underground springs, surrounded by stones carved with the first language. They took me there and made me look into the water. And I saw myself, not as I am, but as I could become, every possible future, every choice and its consequences. Paths where I became like my father, cruel and controlling. Paths where I was weak, unable to protect those I cared about. Paths where I was strong, but alone. He paused. And one path where I was what they needed. A leader who could bridge old ways and new. Someone who respected their traditions while building something lasting. That's the path you chose. That's the path they chose for me? Or maybe it chose itself. The Shadow Wolves deal in destiny, in threads of fate that are woven long before we're born. He looked at her intently. They knew you were coming, Catherine. Her breath caught. What? The old female you met, Vera, she's their eldest, their keeper of prophecy. She told me weeks ago that someone important would arrive in their territory. Someone who needed protection. Who would test my resolve, who would... He trailed off. Would what? Alexander shook his head. She wouldn't say. Just told me to trust my instincts when the time came. That I'd know what to do. Catherine absorbed this, trying to process the idea that her arrival had been predicted, foreseen. I don't understand. I'm nobody special, just an omega who ran away. I don't think that's true. Alexander's gaze was intense in the firelight. I've felt hundreds of pack bonds, Catherine. Initiated thousands of wolves into various packs under my authority. What I felt when our bond formed, that was different, deeper, almost like... Like what? But he shook his head. I'm probably imagining it. Wishful thinking. Imagining what, Alexander? He stood abruptly. You should rest. We have another full day of travel tomorrow. I'll take my first watch. Catherine wanted to push, to demand he finish the thought. But something in his expression stopped her. A vulnerability she hadn't seen before. A fear that didn't match the confident alpha king who'd faced down Connor Blackwood. So she let him retreat, wrapping herself in the blanket he'd given her, lying down by the fire. But sleep was long in coming, and when it did, her dreams were full of amber eyes and ancient prophecies she didn't understand. They reached Silvercrest territory at midday. Catherine had been expecting. She wasn't sure what. Something primitive, perhaps, matching the ancient nature of the Shadow Wolves. Instead, she found a thriving community that straddled the line between wilderness and civilization. The main settlement sat in a broad valley, protected by mountains on 3 sides. Dozens of buildings ranged from traditional log cabins to modern structures with solar panels and large windows. Wolves moved between them, some in human form, some shifted, all clearly comfortable in either shape. Children played in a central area, their laughter carrying on the wind. She saw a training ground where wolves sparred in both forms. Gardens, greenhouse gardens for winter growing, dotted the landscape. A large communal hall stood at the center of everything, built from massive logs that must have been ancient trees. It's beautiful, Catherine breathed. It's home, Alexander said simply. Or it will be, for you. Come on, people are eager to meet you. As they entered the settlement, wolves stopped what they were doing to watch. Not threatening. Curious. Catherine felt the weight of dozens of gazes, heard whispered conversations. That's her? The Omega, the Alpha King protected? She's pretty. Small, though. Can she really be Pack? Catherine lifted her chin, refusing to show intimidation. She'd survived 3 months alone. She could survive being stared at. A woman approached, tall, with silver-streaked dark hair and kind eyes. She wore practical clothes and carried herself with the confidence of a high-ranking wolf. Alexander, welcome home. Her gaze shifted to Catherine. And you must be Catherine. I'm Lydia, Silvercrest's beta. Welcome. The genuine warmth in her voice made some of Catherine's tension ease. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. Come, Lydia said, gesturing toward the central hall. You must be exhausted. We've prepared quarters for you, and there's a hot bath waiting. After you've rested, we'll do formal introductions. Lydia will take care of you, Alexander said. I need to meet with the council, handle some political aftermath from the Connor situation. Will there be fallout? Catherine asked, worried. Nothing I can't handle. Rest, Catherine. That's an order from your alpha. But his smile softened the command. Catherine followed Lydia through the settlement, aware of continued stares but no longer afraid of them. The beta kept up a steady stream of commentary, pointing out important buildings, introducing Catherine to wolves they passed, making her feel less like an outsider and more like a potential friend. The quarters Alexander had prepared were in a small cabin on the edge of the settlement, private but not isolated. Inside was simple but comfortable, a bed with actual linens, a wood stove for heat, a bathing area with a tub that was indeed filled with steaming water. Luxury after 3 months in a barely livable cottage. Everything you need should be here, Lydia said. Clothes in the chest. We guessed your size, so hopefully something fits. Towels, soap, basics. If you need anything else, just ask. Someone's always around. This is too much, Catherine protested. I don't need— Your pack now, Lydia interrupted gently. We take care of our own. Besides, Alexander was very specific about making sure you were comfortable. Something about her tone made Catherine look sharply at the beta. Lydia's expression was knowing, amused. What? Nothing, just— I've known Alexander for 10 years, since he first came to negotiate with the Shadow Wolves. I've never seen him so protective of someone he'd just met. Usually, he's much more pragmatic about new pack members. Catherine felt heat rise to her cheeks. He's just keeping his promise. Of course. Lydia's smee was pure mischief. I'll let you rest. Dinner's in the communal hall at sunset. Don't worry, it's casual, Danny, and I'll make sure no one overwhelms you. After the beta left, Catherine sank into the hot bath with a moan of pure pleasure. Real soap, clean water, privacy to actually relax. She let herself soak until the water cooled, then dressed in clothes from the chest. Soft leggings, a warm tunic, sturdy boots. Everything fit surprisingly well. Alexander must have been paying close attention to notice her size. The thought made her pulse quicken. Those amber eyes, always watching, always aware. The way he'd looked at her by the fire last night, as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. The warmth of their pack bond, thrumming with an awareness that felt more intimate than anything she'd experienced. What had he been about to say? The thought he'd interrupted. Something about their bond being different, being like what? A mating bond? No, impossible. Mating bonds were rare, fated connections that happened maybe once in 1,000 wolves. And they certainly didn't form instantly between an alpha king and a runaway omega he'd just met. Did they? Catherine shook her head, trying to dispel the thought. She was being ridiculous. Alexander had offered her protection and pack membership, nothing more. The intensity she felt was probably just gratitude mixed with the newness of pack bonds after months alone. It had to be. Because the alternative— that fate had drawn them together, that the Shadow Wolves had seen something she couldn't, was too overwhelming to consider. A knock at the door pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. Catherine opened it to find a young woman, maybe 18, with bright eyes and an eager smile. Hi, I'm Sophie. Lydia sent me to walk you to dinner if you're ready. Fair warning, everyone's going to want to meet you, but I promise I'll run interference if anyone gets too nosy. Catherine couldn't help but smile at the girl's enthusiasm. Thank you, I appreciate that. As they walked toward the communal hall, Sophie kept up a steady stream of chatter, pointing out pack members, sharing gossip, making Catherine laugh despite her nervousness. It reminded her of having a younger sister, though she'd been an only child. The hall was massive inside, with long tables arranged in rows and a huge fireplace at one end. Wolves filled the space, easily over 100. Talking, laughing, sharing food family style from large serving dishes. The noise was overwhelming after 3 months of silence, but also comforting. This was what pack was supposed to feel like. Sophie guided her to a table near the front, where Lydia sat with several other wolves. As Catherine approached, conversations quieted, heads turning. Then Alexander stood from the head table, and every wolf in the hall rose with him. Pack, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. I'd like to formally introduce our newest member, Catherine Simeon, formerly of Riverside Pack, now of Silvercrest. She comes under my personal protection and with full pack rights. Anyone who has concerns about this can discuss them with me, privately. The last word carried weight. a warning that challenges wouldn't be tolerated. For a moment, silence held. Then an older wolf stood, raising his cup. "Welcome to Silvercrest, Catherine." The hall erupted in echoes of the welcome, cups raising, wolves calling out greeting. The warmth of it washed over Catherine like a wave, genuine and overwhelming. Through her pack bond with Alexander, she felt his satisfaction, his pride in his pack's acceptance. She met his eyes across the hall, and he smiled. Not the Alpha King's political smile, but something real and warm that made her breath catch. Then the moment passed, everyone sitting again, conversations resuming. But Catherine felt different somehow, less like an outsider, more like someone who might actually belong. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Wolves came by to introduce themselves, sharing stories and jokes, asking about her skills, welcoming her without the constant judgment she'd faced in Riverside. No one seemed to care that she was Omega. They cared that she could hunt, that she'd survived alone, that Alexander had deemed her worth protecting. She was laughing at something Sophie said when she felt a shift in the pack bonds, a warning, a tension. Catherine looked up to find Alexander standing beside her table, his expression unreadable. "Catherine," he said quietly, "could I speak with you? Outside?" The conversations around them died. Sophie shot her an encouraging look, while Lydia's expression had gone carefully neutral. Catherine nodded, standing and following Alexander out of the hall into the cool evening air. He led her away from the building, toward the edge of the settlement where they could speak privately. The moon was rising, nearly full, painting everything in silver light. "Is something wrong?" Catherine asked. "No, yes, maybe." Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd never seen from him. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before you accepted the pack bond." Catherine's heart sank. "What is it?" He turned to face her fully, his amber eyes intense in the moonlight. "When our bond formed, I told you it felt different, deeper than a normal pack bond. I said I might be imagining it. I remember. I wasn't imagining it." Alexander took a breath as if steeling himself. "Catherine, what formed between us? It's not just a pack bond. It's a mate bond." The world seemed to stop spinning. Catherine stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "That's impossible." "I thought so too. But I've spoken with Vera, with the Shadow Wolves' elders. They confirmed it. You and I, we're fated mates." "No." Catherine stepped back, shaking her head. "No, that can't be right. Mate bonds are supposed to be, you're supposed to feel, I know it's overwhelming," Alexander said quickly. "I'm not asking anything of you. The bond won't control you, won't force anything, but you deserve to know the truth." "Why didn't you tell me before?" Anger flashed through her shock. "Before I accepted the pack bond? Because if I had, you never would have believed the rest of my offer was genuine. You would have thought I wanted you for the bond, not because you deserved protection." His expression was painful. "I was going to tell you, I swear, I wanted you to have time to adjust, to see that Silvercrest was real, that my promises were real, before adding this complication." Catherine's mind spun. Mate bonds, with an Alpha King. It was too much, too fast, too overwhelming after everything else. "I need to think," she managed. I can't." "Take all the time you need," Alexander said immediately. "I'm not going anywhere. And Catherine, the bond doesn't change my promise. You're free to reject it, to never acknowledge it. I'll still protect you. You'll still have a place here. Nothing has to change unless you want it to. But everything had already changed. Catherine could feel it now that she knew what to look for. That golden thread between them, stronger than any pack bond should be. Not controlling, but present, warm, right, and terrifying. "I should go," she whispered. Alexander nodded, stepping aside. Catherine fled back to her cabin, her heart racing, her thoughts a chaotic mess of fear and confusion, and something else she wasn't ready to name. Chapter 5. Revelation. Catherine didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the mate bond humming between her and Alexander like a living thing. Now that she knew what it was, she couldn't ignore it, couldn't pretend it was just pack connection or gratitude or anything else she'd told herself. A mate bond. With Alexander, the man who'd saved her from Connor Blackwood, who'd offered her protection when she had nothing, who ruled multiple packs with fairness and strength, who made her feel safe for the first time in her life, who also happened to be one of the most powerful wolves alive, with responsibilities she couldn't begin to understand, and a world so far removed from hers they might as well be different species. What does an alpha king want with a runaway omega? The thought spiraled through her mind on repeat. This has to be a mistake. Fate doesn't work this way. But even as she thought it, her wolf whimpered. Because her wolf knew, had known from the moment Alexander touched her hand, had recognized what her human mind had been too traumatized to see. Mate, alpha, home. A soft knock at her door made Catherine jolt upright. Dawn light was just beginning to filter through the windows. She'd spent the entire night lost in thought. "Catherine?" Lydia's voice gentle and concerned. "May I come in?" Catherine wrapped a blanket around herself and opened the door. The beta stepped inside, carrying a tray with tea and what looked like fresh bread. "I thought you might need this," Lydia said, setting the tray on the small table. "And someone to talk to who isn't emotionally compromised." "Alexander told you." Alexander didn't have to. The whole pack can feel it now that the bond's been acknowledged. It's like... Lydia paused, searching for words. Like a beacon. Mate bonds sing differently than pack bonds. Brighter. Stronger. Catherine sank into a chair, accepting the tea Lydia poured. Everyone knows. Everyone knows you're Alexander's fated mate, yes. But they don't know how you feel about it, or what you'll choose to do about it. Lydia sat across from her. "That's your business." "What I'll choose?" Catherine laughed bitterly. "As if I have a choice. He's the Alpha King. I'm nothing." "Stop." Lydia's voice was sharp. "First, you're not nothing. You're a wolf who survived abandonment, abuse, 3 months alone, and a hunting party sent by one of the cruelest alphas in the region. That's not nothing. Second, you absolutely have a choice. This isn't the old days where fated mates were automatically bonded regardless of consent. Alexander won't force you into anything." "How can you be sure?" "Because I know him." Lydia's expression softened. 10 years ago, Alexander's beta found his fated mate. She was human, didn't even know wolves existed. The bond nearly drove him crazy, but Alexander stood with him through every step. Helped him court her properly, gave her time to adjust, made sure she understood she had every right to refuse, even though it would hurt them both. She eventually accepted, and they're happily mated now. But the point is, Alexander would never force a bond. He hates coercion of any kind. Catherine absorbed this, some of her panic easing. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I came here for safety, for Pack, not this. Life rarely gives us what we expect, Lydia said wryly. But let me ask you something. How do you feel when you're around Alexander? Not what you think you should feel, or what makes logical sense. How do you actually feel? Catherine closed her eyes, letting herself really examine it. Safe. Seen. Like I matter, not because of what I can give him, but just because I exist. He makes me want to be braver than I am. She opened her eyes. And terrified, because those feelings are dangerous. I've learned not to trust alphas, not to let them close. Every alpha I've ever known has hurt me. So the fear isn't about Alexander specifically, it's about what he represents. Isn't that the same thing? No. Lydia leaned forward. Catherine, I'm not going to tell you what to do. This is too important, too personal. But I will say this. Don't let your father's abuse or Connor's cruelty steal something that could be wonderful. Judge Alexander on his own merits, on his actions, not on the sins of other alphas. What if I'm not enough? The words burst out before Catherine could stop them. He's an alpha king. He should have a mate who's strong, powerful, someone who can stand beside him as an equal. Not a broken omega who can barely function in a pack. Oh, honey. Lydia's expression was infinitely compassionate. You're already doing that. You stood up to your father, fled an abusive bond, survived alone, accepted pack bonds despite your trauma. That's not weakness. That's incredible strength. And Alexander sees it. Why do you think he was so drawn to you? The mate bond. The mate bond doesn't create feelings, Lydia interrupted. It recognizes what's already there. On some level, you and Alexander were drawn to each other before either of you knew about the bond. It just gave name to what was already beginning. Catherine thought back to that moment in her cottage doorway. The way her breath had caught when she first saw him. How his presence had felt both dangerous and comforting. The strange certainty that he would keep his promises even when she had no logical reason to believe it. Maybe Lydia was right. Maybe the bond had just illuminated something already forming between them. I need to talk to him, Catherine said, properly, not running away or hiding. I need to understand what this means, what he expects. Good, Lydia stood. He's in his office in the main hall. Fair warning, he didn't sleep either. Between guilt about not telling you sooner and worry that you'll reject the bond, he's been a mess. Very un-alpha king-like. It's actually kind of endearing. Despite everything, Catherine smiled. The idea of the powerful Alexander being reduced to a worried mess because of her was strangely comforting. After Lydia left, Catherine took time to prepare herself. She bathed, dressed carefully in clean clothes, braided her hair. Small acts of control when everything felt chaotic. Then she made her way to the main hall, her heart hammering but her steps steady. The hall was mostly empty this early. A few wolves nodded greetings as she passed. Their expressions knowing but not intrusive. Everyone giving her space to handle this in her own way. Alexander's office was on the second floor, a corner room with windows overlooking the settlement. The door stood slightly ajar. Catherine raised her hand to knock, then paused as she heard voices inside. Tell the council that Catherine's status changes nothing. Alexander's voice, firm but tired. She's Pack regardless of the mate bond. Her rights and protections don't depend on whether she accepts me. But if she does accept, a male voice Catherine didn't recognize. She'd be Luna, That carries weight, Alexander. The packs that defer to you would expect— The packs can expect whatever they want, Alexander cut him off. Catherine doesn't owe anyone anything. If she chooses to accept the bond, it will be because she wants to, not because of political pressure or pack expectations. Is that clear? Clear, Alpha King. The other voice sounded chastened. I meant no disrespect to her. I know, but others might not be so careful with their words. Spread the message. Catherine is off limits for speculation or pressure. Anyone who makes her uncomfortable answers to me personally. Footsteps approached the door. Catherine quickly stepped back as a tall, scarred wolf emerged, nodding respectfully to her before leaving. She took a breath and knocked on the doorframe. Come in, Alexander called. She stepped inside to find him standing by the window, backlit by morning sun. He'd clearly been up all night. His hair was disheveled, his clothes rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. But his expression when he saw her was painfully hopeful. Catherine, thank you for coming. He gestured to a chair. Please sit. Would you like tea, water? I have— Alexander. Catherine interrupted his nervous rambling gently. Stop. Just stop. You're making me more nervous. He laughed shakily. Sorry, I'm not handling this well. Usually I'm much more composed. Usually you're not worried about your fated mate rejecting you. No. His amber eyes met hers. Usually I'm not. Catherine sat, and after a moment Alexander took the chair across from her rather than retreating behind his desk. Keeping them on equal footing, she realized. Not using his position to intimidate or control. I overheard what you told that wolf, Catherine said, about my rights not depending on accepting the bond. Alexander's jaw tightened. You weren't supposed to hear that. I'm glad I did. It helped. She took a breath. I need to understand what this means, Alexander. What a mate bond between us would actually look like. Not the fairy tale version, the reality. All right. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, giving her his full attention. The reality is that a mate bond creates a permanent connection between two wolves. Deeper than pack bonds, more intimate than any other relationship. We'd be able to sense each other's emotions, location, well-being. The connection would grow stronger over time, especially after we— He paused, color rising slightly. After we consummate the bond. Catherine's cheeks heated, but she pushed past the embarrassment. And if we don't? If I accept the bond but don't want that? Then we don't. The bond would still exist, still offer protection and connection, but it wouldn't be complete. It would be uncomfortable, not painful, but like an itch we couldn't scratch, for both of us. Alexander's expression was serious. I won't lie to you, Catherine. Accepting a mate bond but refusing intimacy would be difficult, but it's your right, your body, your choice, always. What about your responsibilities as Alpha King? You said the other packs would expect things if I became your mate. You're Luna. They'd expect you to stand beside me at formal events, to represent Silvercrest in certain situations, to help mediate disputes if you're willing. Lunas often serve as arbitrators because they're seen as more neutral than the Alpha. He paused. But those are requests, not requirements. You could refuse all of it and remain simply my mate, living quietly here in Silvercrest. I'd support whatever you chose. You're an Alpha King. Don't you need a Luna who's more? Someone powerful and confident and not terrified of her own shadow? I need a mate who challenges me to be better, Alexander said quietly. Someone who understands what it's like to be underestimated and survives anyway. Someone brave enough to choose her own path even when the whole world tells her she can't. His eyes held hers. I need someone exactly like you, Catherine. The rest is just details we'd figure out together. Catherine's throat tightened. I'm not who you think I am. I'm not brave or strong. I'm just running, always running. You stopped running, Alexander pointed out, when you chose to accept my pack bonds. When you opened that door yesterday instead of hiding inside. That's not running. That's facing your fear and choosing to trust anyway. I'm terrified of this bond, she admitted, of what it means. Of losing myself again like I did with my father's pack. That's the difference. Alexander reached across the space between them, offering his hand palm up, not grabbing, just offering. You won't lose yourself. A true mate bond doesn't consume, it complements. You'd still be Catherine with your own thoughts and dreams and autonomy. I'd just be lucky enough to walk beside you. Catherine stared at his offered hand. This was the moment. Accept or refuse. Step forward into the unknown or retreat to safety. Except safety was an illusion. She'd learned that over 3 months of isolation. True safety came from connection, from trust, from choosing to be vulnerable with someone who'd proven themselves worthy. And Alexander had proven himself, over and over, with his patience, his protection, his respect for her choices, even when it cost him. Slowly, Catherine placed her hand in his. The bond flared golden and warm, stronger than before. Not overwhelming, but present, real, right. I accept, she whispered. The bond. You. All of it. I'm terrified and I'll probably panic at least 12 more times, but I accept. Alexander's expression transformed. Joy, relief, something deeper that made her breath catch. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent shivers down her spine. Thank you, he said against her skin, for trusting me, for giving us a chance. I swear I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of it. You already have, Catherine said, surprised to find she meant it. Now you just have to keep not being terrible. He laughed, bright and genuine. I think I can manage that. They sat there for a moment, hands joined, the bond humming between them. Catherine felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe her life could be more than survival. Maybe it could be actually good. So what happens now? She asked. Now? Alexander smiled. Now I'd like to take you to breakfast, show you more of the territory, introduce you properly to the pack as my mate, if you're comfortable with that, and then... His expression grew more serious. Then we need to deal with the political aftermath. Your father will have heard by now that you're here, that you're mine. He won't take it well. Will he challenge you? He'd be an idiot to try, but idiots exist, especially when their pride is wounded. Alexander squeezed her hand. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. That's what mates do. Together. The word resonated through Catherine's chest, warm and promising. She wasn't alone anymore. Wasn't just a runaway Omega hiding from her past. She was Alexander's mate. Luna of Silvercrest. A wolf with a pack, a purpose, and a future she got to choose. Together, she echoed, and knew she meant it. Chapter 6, Challenges. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and revelation. Catherine learned what it meant to be the Alpha King's mate, and discovered it was both easier and harder than she'd imagined. Easier because the Silvercrest wolves accepted her without question. As Alexander's mate, she had instant status and respect, but she quickly learned that respect was maintained through action, not just position. So she trained. Every morning she joined the pack's combat sessions, Lydia worked with her personally, teaching her to fight in both human and wolf form. Catherine had speed and agility, omega traits that made her quick on her feet, but she lacked strength and experience. Use your size, Lydia instructed, circling her on the training ground. You're smaller than most opponents. That means you can slip under their guard, move where they don't expect. Stop trying to fight like an alpha. Fight like an omega with teeth. It was grueling work. Catherine collected more bruises than she could count, got thrown to the ground more times than her pride enjoyed. But slowly, incrementally, she improved. Learned to anticipate attacks, to use her opponent's strength against them, to fight dirty when honor wasn't an option. Alexander watched sometimes from the edge of the training ground, his presence a warm weight through their bond. She could feel his pride when she landed a good hit, his concern when she took a bad fall, his desire to interfere warring with his respect for her autonomy. "You're holding back," Catherine called to him one afternoon after she'd successfully pinned Sophie in a sparring match. "I can feel it through the bond." Alexander's lips quirked. "Am I that transparent?" "To me, yes." Catherine released Sophie, helping the younger wolf to her feet. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, I just—" He moved closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I hate watching you get hurt. I know it's training, I know it's necessary, but my instinct is to step in, to protect you from everything, including learning experiences." "That would make me weak," Catherine said firmly. "You said you wanted a mate who could stand beside you. That means I need to be able to stand, period, even when it's uncomfortable for you to watch." "I know, doesn't make it easier." Alexander touched her face gently, his thumb brushing a bruise forming on her cheek. "You're doing amazing, by the way. Lydia says you're a natural." "Lydia's kind. Lydia doesn't do false praise. If she says you're good, you're good." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, a gesture that had become familiar over the past weeks. "I need to ride to the northern border. There's a dispute between two packs that needs arbitration. I'll be gone 3 days." Catherine's chest tightened. They hadn't been apart since she'd accepted the bond. "I'll come with you." "You don't have to. I know political arbitration isn't exciting." "I want to," Catherine interrupted. "If I'm going to be Luna, I need to learn what that actually means. Besides," she managed a smile despite her nervousness. "The bond gets uncomfortable when we're apart, remember? Itchy." Alexander's expression warmed. "Then pack a bag, my mate. Let's go save some idiots from themselves." The dispute turned out to be exactly as tedious as Alexander had warned. Two neighboring packs were arguing over hunting rights in a shared territory, and both alphas were too proud to admit they were basically fighting over who got to chase deer in a specific valley. Catherine sat beside Alexander during the mediation, watching him work. He listened to both sides with infinite patience, asked clarifying questions, pointed out inconsistencies gently. When tempers flared, he didn't raise his voice. He simply let his presence expand, his authority as Alpha King filling the room until everyone remembered who they were shouting in front of. It was masterful and exhausting. "How do you do this all the time?" Catherine asked that night in the cabin they'd been given. "Listen to wolves argue about nothing for hours without losing your mind?" "Wine helps," Alexander said, pouring them each a glass, also remembering that to them it's not nothing. That valley represents food for their packs, security for their families. They're not really fighting over territory. They're fighting because they're afraid. Afraid of failing their packs, of being seen as weak, of not being enough. You see that in everyone, don't you? The fear underneath the anger. Usually. Alexander settled beside her on the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. It's easier to be generous with judgment when you remember that most wolves are doing the best they can with what they know. Catherine leaned against him, savoring the solid warmth of his presence. Over the past weeks, they'd gotten physically comfortable with each other. Touches, casual affection, sleeping in the same bed, though nothing more intimate had happened yet. The bond seemed to encourage closeness, making separation feel wrong and proximity feel right. "Tell me about your sister," Catherine said suddenly. "You mentioned her before, but not details." Alexander tensed slightly, then relaxed. "Her name is Isabella. She's 4 years younger than me, Omega designation. Growing up, she was sunshine, bright and happy, and convinced the world was good." "What happened?" "My father happened." Alexander's voice went hard. "When she turned 18, he arranged a bonding with an alpha from a neighboring pack, a political alliance that would have given him control over their mining rights. Isabella refused. She'd fallen in love with a beta from our own pack, wanted to mate with him instead. Your father said no. My father had her locked in the Omega house, told her she'd accept the bonding or he'd have her chosen mate killed." Alexander's hand clenched into a fist. "Isabella tried to run, got as far as the border before his enforcers caught her. They dragged her back, and my father..." He took a shuddering breath. "He had her beaten in front of the whole pack, said she needed to learn obedience." Catherine took his hand, threading her fingers through his. Through the bond, she could feel his old rage, his guilt, his pain at the memory. "I wasn't there," Alexander continued. "I was away handling a border dispute. By the time I got back, Isabella was locked up, broken and terrified, and my father was finalizing the bonding contract. So I challenged him. For her, for every wolf he'd hurt, for the pack that deserved better." Alexander met her eyes. "I nearly died. He was stronger than I expected, more vicious. But I couldn't lose. Isabella was counting on me, so I won. And she got her happy ending. Eventually. It took time for her to heal, to trust again, but her beta never gave up on her. He courted her properly, let her set the pace, proved he was nothing like the alpha my father had chosen. They're mated now, with 2 pups. She's happy." Alexander's expression softened. "She wants to meet you, by the way. Keep sending messages asking when I'm bringing my mate to visit." "She knows about me?" "I told her the day after you accepted the bond. She was thrilled. Said it was about time I found someone who could match my stubborn streak." Alexander smiled. "You'd like her. She's clever and fierce and takes no shit from anyone, Alpha King brother included." "I'd like to meet her," Catherine said honestly. "Your whole family, actually. I want to know the people who made you who you are." "Most of them are dead," Alexander said bluntly. "My father died 5 years after I beat him. Couldn't handle losing his status. My mother passed when I was young. It's just Isabella and me now. And you. And you." The words settled into Catherine's chest. Warm and significant. She was family now. Not just mate, but chosen family in a way her blood relatives had never been. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "that you lost them, that your father was cruel." "Don't be. His cruelty taught me what kind of alpha never to be, and his death freed Isabella to live the life she deserved." Alexander pulled Catherine closer, tucking her against his side. "Besides, I have you now. That's worth everything I went through to get here." Catherine tilted her head up, finding his amber eyes watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. They were so close, his lips just inches from hers. The bond hummed between them, warm and electric, encouraging proximity, intimacy. She could kiss him. Should kiss him, probably. They were mates, after all. It would be natural, expected. But something held her back. Not fear, exactly. More like uncertainty. She'd never been kissed by someone she actually wanted. Every touch in her past had been forced or coerced or part of some political game. This, whatever this was with Alexander, it was different, important. And she didn't want to rush it just because the bond said she should. Alexander seemed to sense her hesitation. He pressed a kiss to her forehead instead, gentle and undemanding. "Sleep," he murmured. "Tomorrow we finish this mediation, and then we can go home." Home, Silvercrest. The word resonated with rightness. Catherine let herself relax against him, feeling safe and valued and like maybe, finally, she was exactly where she belonged. They returned to Silvercrest 3 days later to find the settlement in controlled chaos. Wolves rushed back and forth, carrying weapons, reinforcing defenses. Lydia met them at the border, seized, her expression grim. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Alpha Simeon is here, with 50 wolves at his back. He's demanding Catherine be returned to him for punishment." Catherine's blood ran cold. "My father is here?" "Camped just outside our border," Lydia confirmed. "He arrived yesterday with a formal challenge. Claims you stole property when you left. Jewelry, clothing, things that belong to the pack. Says you're a thief and a disgrace to Omega designation." "That's bullshit," Catherine said, anger overriding fear. "I left with nothing but the clothes I was wearing." "We know, everyone knows," Lydia looked at Alexander. "But he's demanding a formal pack tribunal, and as her blood alpha, he has the right to request one." Alexander's expression had gone cold, dangerous. Through the bond, Catherine felt his fury, controlled but absolute. "He wants a tribunal? Fine, we'll give him one, but it will be here on Silvercrest territory, judged by neutral witnesses." "Alexander," Catherine started. "No." He turned to her, his eyes blazing. "Your father abandoned you, sold you to a monster. He has no right to demand anything from you. We're ending this. Today." Chapter 7. Tribunal. The tribunal was set for sunset in Silvercrest's central gathering area. Lydia had sent word to 5 neutral packs, asking them to send representatives to witness and judge. By the time the sun began its descent, over 200 wolves filled the space. Silvercrest members, neutral witnesses, and Alpha Simeon's contingent. Catherine stood beside Alexander, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Through their bond, she felt his steady strength, his absolute certainty that they would win this. Her father stood across from them, flanked by his beta and several enforcers. Alpha Simeon looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, silver-haired, with cold eyes that had never held warmth even when she was a child. He stared at her now with open contempt. "Catherine," he said, her name a condemnation. "You've caused considerable trouble." "I left," Catherine replied, keeping her voice steady. "That's not a crime. You fled a legal bonding contract. You stole pack property. You brought shame to our family name." Alpha Simeon's lip curled. "And now you've attached yourself to the Alpha King like some desperate Omega seeking status." Alexander growled, a sound that made several wolves step back. "Mind your tongue, Simeon. She's my mate. Insult her again and we'll resolve this a different way." "Your mate?" Alpha Simeon laughed bitterly. "How convenient. The runaway Omega lands on her feet by spreading her legs for... He didn't finish the sentence. Alexander moved faster than Catherine could track, crossing the space between them in a blur. He had Alpha Simeon by the throat, lifting him off his feet, his eyes blazing with lethal intent. "I warned you." Alexander's voice was death itself. "Alexander, stop!" Catherine called, pushing past her shock. "He's not worth it, please." For a moment, she thought he wouldn't listen. Then slowly, Alexander lowered her father back to the ground, releasing him with obvious reluctance. Alpha Simeon gasped for air, his face flushed with rage and humiliation. "The tribunal will proceed," announced one of the neutral alphas, an older woman named Kira. "Alpha Simeon, state your formal complaint." Alpha Simeon straightened his clothes, glaring at Alexander before turning to address the witnesses. "My daughter Catherine broke a legal bonding contract with Blackwood Pack. In doing so, she violated Pack law and brought dishonor to Riverside. Additionally, she stole valuable property when she fled. Jewelry passed down through Omega lines, clothing purchased by the Pack, items that belong to our collective, not to her personally." "Catherine Simeon," Alpha Kira said, "how do you answer these charges?" Catherine stepped forward, her heart hammering but her voice clear. "I broke no law. Pack law states that any Omega has the right to refuse a bonding they believe will result in harm. I exercised that right when I learned of Connor Blackwood's history with his previous mates." "You had no proof of potential harm," her father interjected. "Just gossip and cowardice." "3 dead mates is proof," Catherine shot back. "And I was willing to accept Pack judgment on my refusal. But you didn't offer judgment. You locked me in the Omega house and told me I'd sign the contract or be punished. That's coercion, not law." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several neutral witnesses nodded, clearly agreeing with her interpretation. "As for the theft charges," Catherine continued, "I left with nothing but my clothes and a small amount of food. I stole nothing. If you have evidence otherwise, present it." Alpha Simeon's jaw clenched. "The jewelry was never mine," Catherine interrupted. "It was shown to me as part of the bonding negotiations, but I never wore it, never possessed it. How can I steal something I never had?" "Enough of this," Alexander said, his patience clearly exhausted. "Simeon, you're not here because you believe Catherine committed crimes. You're here because you lost control of your property and your pride can't handle it. Admit it. She is my property." Her father's mask slipped, revealing the rage beneath. "I raised her, provided for her, gave her everything she had. She owed me obedience and she refused. That debt doesn't disappear just because she ran away." "Wolves are not property," Alexander said quietly, dangerously. "And parents don't own their children. The fact that you believe otherwise tells me everything I need to know about why Catherine fled." "You have no right to judge me," Alpha Simeon snarled. "You're not her father. You're not even her alpha. She left Riverside Pack when she ran." "Actually," Lydia stepped forward holding a document. "Catherine formally requested transfer to Silvercrest Pack 3 weeks ago. The paperwork was filed with the regional council and approved yesterday. She's officially Alexander's Pack member, which means he is her alpha. And as her mate, he has even more standing to defend her." Alpha Simeon's face went purple. "This is a mockery of Pack law." "This is Pack law," Alpha Kira said firmly. "Alpha Simeon, your charges are unfounded. Catherine exercised her legal right to refuse a harmful bonding. She stole nothing." And she's now under another Alpha's authority, which means you have no claim over her. This tribunal finds in Catherine's favor." The other neutral witnesses nodded their agreement. Catherine felt relief flood through her, so strong her knees weakened. Alexander's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Furthermore," Alpha Kira continued, "your treatment of your daughter raises concerns about Omega welfare in Riverside Pack. We'll be conducting an inspection within the month to ensure no other Omegas are being similarly mistreated." Alpha Simeon looked like he'd been slapped. "You can't." "We can and will," another neutral Alpha said. "Any Alpha who views his pack members as property is unfit to lead. Consider this your warning, Simeon. Clean up your practices or face challenges to your authority." The tribunal was dismissed. Alpha Simeon and his wolves left immediately, her father not even glancing at Catherine as he departed. She watched him go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. He'd never loved her, not really, but some small part of her had hoped. "Don't," Alexander said softly, pulling her into his arms. "Don't waste your heart on someone who never deserved it." Catherine pressed her face against his chest, letting the bond soothe her. "I'm free," she whispered. "Truly free." "Truly free," Alexander confirmed. "He'll never touch you again. I swear it." That night, the pack celebrated. Someone had organized an impromptu party in the communal hall. Food, music, wolves dancing and laughing. Catherine found herself swept into the festivities, pulled from conversation to conversation, celebrated not as the Alpha King's mate, but as herself. Sophie grabbed her hands, pulling her into a dance. "You were amazing today. The way you stood up to your father, so badass." Catherine laughed, letting herself be spun around. The freedom of it, being able to dance, to laugh, to simply exist without fear, was intoxicating. She caught Alexander's eye across the hall. He was talking with Lydia and some other pack leaders, but his gaze kept finding her, warm and proud. Through the bond, she felt his contentment, his satisfaction at seeing her happy. Later, when the party wound down, they walked back to their cabin together. The night was clear, stars brilliant overhead. Catherine breathed in the cool air, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Thank you," she said as they reached the door, "for standing with me today. For not just taking over, but letting me fight for myself." "You didn't need me," Alexander said. "You handled it perfectly. I was just there for backup." "I needed you," Catherine corrected, "just not to fight my battles. I needed you to believe I could fight them myself. There's a difference." She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth of the bond between them, the pull that had been building for weeks. "Alexander," she said softly, "I want to complete the bond." His eyes widened. "Catherine, you don't have to, I know I don't have to. I want to." She stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "I trust you. I'm ready." "Are you sure?" His voice was rough with restrained desire. "Because once we do this, there's no going back. The bond will be permanent, complete." "I'm sure." Catherine rose on her toes, bringing her lips close to his. "Make me yours, Alpha King, completely." Alexander's control shattered. He kissed her, deeply, thoroughly, with weeks of wanting finally unleashed. Catherine melted into him, the bond singing with rightness, with completion, with home. He lifted her easily, carrying her inside, kicking the door closed behind them. They stumbled toward the bedroom, kissing and touching, learning each other with hands and lips and whispered words. When they finally came together, the bond exploded into golden light. Catherine felt it snap fully into place, Not just connection, but fusion. Two wolves becoming something greater than either alone. Mine. Alexander's voice echoed through the bond, reverent and possessive. Ours, Catherine corrected, and felt his joy ripple through her. Later, lying tangled together in the darkness, Catherine traced patterns on Alexander's chest. I never thought I'd have this, she admitted. Someone who sees me, who chose me, not for what I could give them, but just for being me. I never thought I'd find you, Alexander replied, his fingers running through her hair. A mate bond is rare enough. Finding someone who challenges me, who makes me want to be better, who's brave enough to stand beside an alpha king and tell him when he's being an idiot, that's even rarer. Catherine laughed softly. I haven't told you you're being an idiot yet. Give it time. Isabella does it at least once a week. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Speaking of which, she's threatened to storm Silvercrest if I don't bring you to visit soon. Apparently, keeping my mate from meeting my sister is grounds for sibling warfare. Then we should go, Catherine said, Asal. I want to meet her. Want to know all the embarrassing stories from your childhood. There are so many, Alexander groaned dramatically. I was a very serious, very ridiculous child. Isabella has ammunition for days. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, the bond humming contentedly between them. Catherine felt complete in a way she'd never experienced, not just physically satisfied, but emotionally whole. Like a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing had finally clicked into place. What are you thinking? Alexander asked, clearly sensing her thoughts through their now complete bond. That I was an idiot for being afraid of this, Catherine admitted. The bond, you, all of it. I wasted 3 weeks being terrified when I could have had this. You weren't ready 3 weeks ago, neither was I, honestly. Alexander shifted so he could look at her face. We both needed time to trust, to learn each other, to choose this consciously rather than just being swept along by fate. What we have now is stronger because we built it carefully. When did you know, Catherine asked, that you wanted to complete the bond? The moment you opened your cottage door, Alexander said without hesitation. I looked at you, this fierce, frightened Omega who'd survived alone for months, and something in me just recognized you, not just as mate, but as mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to stand beside. He smiled ruefully. It terrified me, actually. I'd spent years building my reputation as the impartial alpha king. And suddenly, here was this woman who made me want to burn down anyone who'd ever hurt her. You didn't, though. You gave me choices instead. Because that's what you needed. And what I needed to prove, that I could put your needs above my own desires, that I was worthy of your trust. Alexander traced her jawline gently. I'd wait 1,000 years if that's what you needed. You're worth it. Catherine's throat tightened with emotion. I don't deserve you. Wrong. You deserve everything. Alexander's eyes blazed with intensity. And I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you know it. Chapter 8. Luna Ascendant. The weeks following the completed bond passed in a blur of happiness Catherine had never thought possible. She woke each morning wrapped in Alexander's arms, safe and warm and wanted. She trained with the pack, her skills improving daily under Lydia's tutelage. She explored Silvercrest territory, learning every trail and stream, meeting pack members, finding her place in this new life. And slowly, carefully, she began to embrace her role as Luna. It started small. Sophie asked her advice about a dispute with another young wolf. Catherine listened, helped them work through the problem, and felt a surge of satisfaction when they thanked her for her wisdom. Then Lydia invited her to sit in on Pack Council meetings, to learn how Silvercrest was governed, to offer her perspective on Omega welfare issues. "You have insights we need," Lydia explained when Catherine protested she wasn't qualified. "You've lived in a pack that oppressed Omegas. You understand their fears, their needs, in ways alphas and betas never can. That's valuable, Catherine. Don't diminish it." So Catherine started speaking up, suggesting changes to Omega housing, more privacy, more autonomy, proposing self-defense training be mandatory for all pack members regardless of designation, advocating for Omega representation on the council itself. Alexander supported every suggestion, his pride in her radiating through their bond. "This is what I needed," he told her after one particularly productive meeting. "Someone who sees what I miss, who makes Silvercrest better just by being part of it." But not everyone was pleased with the changes. 3 months after the bond completion, Catherine was walking through the settlement when she overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. "The Luna's getting too bold," a male voice said, "Yeet. Changing everything. Pushing Omega rights like they're equals to alphas. It's not natural." "Careful," another voice warned. "Alexander won't tolerate disrespect toward his mate." "I'm not disrespecting her. I'm stating facts. She was a runaway 3 months ago. Now she's dictating pack policy? She hasn't earned that authority." Catherine's hands clenched into fists. Part of her wanted to confront them, to defend herself. But a wiser part, the part that had learned to survive, told her to listen, to learn what objections existed so she could address them properly. She continued walking, pretending she hadn't heard. But the words stung more than she wanted to admit. That night, she was quieter than usual. Alexander noticed immediately, concern flooding their bond. "What's wrong?" he asked as they prepared for bed. Catherine hesitated, then decided honesty was better than silence. She told him about the overheard conversation, about the criticism of her role as Luna. Alexander's expression darkened. "Who said this? I'll handle it." "No." Catherine caught his arm. "That's exactly the wrong approach. If you defend me, it just proves their point, that I'm only Luna because I'm your mate, not because I've earned respect on my own." "You have earned respect. From some, not from everyone. And that's okay, Alexander. I haven't been here long. Some wolves will need time to accept me, to see that I'm serious about this role." Catherine took a breath. "I need to prove myself. Not through you, but through my own actions." Alexander looked torn between his protective instincts and his respect for her judgment. Finally, he nodded. "All right, but if anyone actively disrespects you, undermines you, tries to harm you, that I won't tolerate." "Fair enough." Catherine moved into his arms, seeking comfort in their bond. "How did Isabella handle this, when she became Luna of her pack?" "She punched the first wolf who questioned her authority," Alexander said, amusement coloring his voice. "Broke his nose. After that, everyone fell in line." Catherine laughed despite herself. "Subtle." "Isabella's never been subtle, but she's also brilliant at reading pack dynamics, at knowing which battles to fight and which to let go. You remind me of her in that way, strategic even when you're scared." "I'm not scared," Catherine protested, "just cautious. It's okay to be both. You're navigating a difficult role with grace." Not everyone could do that. Catherine tilted her head up, kissing him softly. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I don't quite believe in myself." Always, Alexander murmured against her lips. My fierce mate, my Luna. The opportunity to prove herself came 2 weeks later, in the worst possible way. Catherine was leading a group of young wolves on a foraging expedition, teaching them which plants were edible, which had medicinal properties, how to read the forest. It was peaceful, educational, the kind of Luna activity that shouldn't have involved any danger. Then Sophie screamed. Catherine spun to find the young wolf pointing at something in the underbrush. A child, no more than 5 years old, lay unconscious and pale. Not a silvercrest pup. The scent was wrong, foreign. Everyone back, Catherine commanded, her training kicking in. She approached cautiously, checking for threats, then knelt beside the child. A boy, she realized, badly injured. Claw marks across his chest, shallow breathing, skin cold to the touch. Sophie, run back to the settlement. Get Lydia and the healers, now. Catherine stripped off her jacket, wrapping it around the boy to warm him. The rest of you, form a perimeter. Watch for threats. As Sophie sprinted away, Catherine examined the wounds more carefully. Claw marks, but not from any normal wolf. Too large, too deep, the edges blackened as if burned. Rogue. One of the older wolves whispered, fear in their voice. Those are rogue marks. Corrupted wolves. Catherine had heard of rogues. Wolves who'd gone mad, losing their humanity to their beast side. They were rare but deadly, attacking anything that moved, leaving a trail of destruction. And one had attacked this child. Where are his parents? Catherine asked, scanning the forest. His pack? Dead probably, the wolf replied grimly. Rogues don't leave survivors usually. This pup was lucky. Lucky seemed like the wrong word for a child lying unconscious and bleeding. But Catherine understood the sentiment. The healers arrived within minutes, Lydia at their head. They stabilized the boy, prepared to move him back to the settlement. But before they could, a howl echoed through the forest. Long, mournful, inhuman. The rogue was still here. Get the child to safety, Catherine ordered. Lydia, take everyone back to the settlement. What about you? Lydia demanded. Someone needs to track the rogue, find out where it's denning, whether there are more of them. I can move quietly, scout ahead. Catherine met the beta's eyes. I'm not suggesting I fight it. Just gather information for Alexander and the warriors. Lydia looked torn. The Alpha King will kill me if something happens to you. Then make sure nothing happens to me. Give me a head start, then follow at a distance with warriors. But get that child to safety first. Before Lydia could argue further, Catherine shifted. Her wolf was smaller, quieter than most, perfect for tracking without being noticed. She picked up the rogue scent, wrong, corrupted like rotting meat and madness, and followed it deeper into the forest. The trail led to a ravine, steep-sided and shadowed. Catherine approached cautiously, using every stealth technique Lydia had taught her. Below, in a hollow formed by fallen trees, she saw it. The rogue was massive, easily twice the size of a normal wolf. Its fur was matted and dark with dried blood, its eyes blank and feral. And it wasn't alone. 3 more pups cowered in the corner of the hollow, terrified and uninjured. Catherine's heart clenched. The rogue hadn't killed them, was trying to protect them? As she watched, the rogue moved toward the pups, but not aggressively. It was trying to nudge them toward food it had gathered. Small game, roots, water. The pups whimpered and pressed themselves against the wall, clearly terrified. This wasn't a mindless killer. This was a parent who'd gone rogue, clinging to enough humanity to try to care for children even as madness consumed them. Catherine shifted back to human form, staying hidden. She needed to get those pups out, but a direct confrontation would be suicide. She needed Alexander, needed the pack's warriors. But as she started to retreat, her foot dislodged a stone. The rogue's head snapped toward her hiding spot. For a moment their eyes met, hers wide with fear, its blank with madness. Then it charged. Catherine shifted and ran, using her smaller size to navigate through underbrush the massive rogue crashed through. Behind her, she heard its snarls, felt the ground shake with its pursuit. She burst into a clearing and found herself surrounded. Alexander stood at the center, flanked by 24 warriors in fighting formation. His eyes found hers immediately, relief and fury warring in his expression. The rogue exploded from the trees behind her. The warriors moved to intercept, but Catherine shifted back to human form, shouting, "Wait! Don't kill it!" Everyone froze. The rogue snarled, confused by the lack of attack. "It's protecting pups," Catherine said quickly, addressing Alexander. "3 of them, unharmed, in a hollow back there. The rogue's not mindless. It's trying to care for them even though it's corrupted. If we kill it, those pups might die before we can find them." Alexander's expression shifted from battle-ready to thoughtful. "Can we capture it instead?" "Possible," Lydia said, "but dangerous. Rogues are unpredictable." "So are desperate parents," Catherine countered. "Let me try something." Before anyone could stop her, she walked toward the rogue. Alexander made a strangled sound of protest, but she held up a hand, asking him to trust her. The rogue watched her approach, muscles tense to attack. But Catherine moved slowly, non-threateningly, projecting calm through her body language. "I know you're still in there," she said softly. "Parent protecting children. I understand. We're not here to hurt them. We want to help them, to keep them safe while we help you." The rogue's snarls lessened, confusion in its blank eyes. Catherine took another step. "Let us take the pups somewhere safe, somewhere with food and warmth and healing. You can't care for them anymore, can you? You're losing yourself, but they don't have to lose you completely. Let us save them, please." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, the rogue sat, its head tilted, and Catherine saw a flash of awareness, a parent making an impossible choice. "Lydia," Catherine said quietly, not taking her eyes off the rogue, "take warriors to the hollow. Get the pups out carefully. Bring them here." The beta moved immediately, half the warriors going with her. Catherine stood with the rogue, talking softly, keeping it focused on her rather than the pack moving through the forest. When Lydia returned with 3 terrified pups wrapped in blankets, Catherine gestured for them to be brought forward. The rogue saw its children, safe and cared for, and something in its posture broke. It howled, not aggressive but mournful. A goodbye. Then it turned and loped back into the forest, disappearing among the trees. "Should we follow?" one warrior asked. "No," Alexander said quietly, his eyes on Catherine. "Let it go. It chose mercy. We can honor that." The settlement buzzed with news of Catherine's actions. By nightfall, every pack member had heard how their Luna had faced down a rogue, talked it into releasing its pups, saved 4 young lives without violence. The wolves who'd questioned her authority fell silent. Those who doubted her courage reconsidered. And those who'd seen her as just the Alpha King's mate began to see her as Luna in her own right. "You terrified me today," Alexander said that night, holding her close. "When you walked toward that rogue, I thought my heart would stop. I had to try, Catherine replied. Those pups deserved a chance, and so did their parent, corrupted or not. You showed them mercy, courage, everything a Luna should be. Alexander kissed her deeply. I'm so proud of you, Catherine. So grateful you're mine. Ours, Catherine corrected with a smile, using her favorite amendment to his possessive declarations. Ours, Alexander agreed, and the bond between them sang with joy, with pride, with love that had grown from protection into something far deeper. Epilogue. 1 year later, Catherine stood at the edge of Silvercrest's central gathering area, watching the celebration unfold. The annual Harvest Festival filled the settlement with music and laughter, pack members dancing and feasting under strings of lights Alexander had insisted on hanging. So much had changed in a year. The 4 pups they'd rescued had been adopted by Silvercrest families, thriving under pack care. The rogue had never been seen again, but Catherine liked to think it had found peace somewhere in the deep forest. Her role as Luna had solidified. The council now included Omega representation, 3 voices Catherine had helped select. Wolves who understood the unique challenges of their designation. Self-defense training was mandatory. Omega housing had been redesigned for privacy and autonomy. And other packs had started asking for her advice on their own Omega welfare programs. The Alpha King's Luna, they called her now, with respect rather than skepticism. But the best change was personal. Catherine's hand moved to her stomach, still flat but containing a secret she had discovered just that morning. A pup. Their pup. Growing inside her, a product of their mate bond and their love. You're glowing, Lydia said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of cider. Want to share why? Catherine accepted the drink, smiling. Maybe I want to tell Alexander first and watch him lose his mind with joy. He's going to be insufferable, Lydia predicted. Overprotective alpha multiplied by proud father. The pack won't survive it. The pack will be fine. Catherine spotted Alexander across the gathering, talking with Sophie and some young wolves. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, his amber eyes finding hers immediately. The bond between them hummed with warmth, with love, with home. He excused himself and made his way to her, smiling. Having fun, my Luna? Always my alpha. Catherine rose on her toes to kiss him. Walk with me. I have something to tell you. Alexander's expression shifted to concern. Is everything all right? Everything's perfect, Catherine assured him, taking his hand. Come on. They walked away from the festivities, toward the forest edge where they'd first talked about the mate bond, where Catherine had accepted his protection and changed both their lives forever. You're being mysterious, Alexander observed. Should I be worried? You should be excited. Catherine stopped, turning to face him, suddenly nervous despite her joy. Alexander, I'm pregnant. He froze. For a long moment, he just stared at her, processing. Then his face transformed. Shock to joy to wonder to something that looked almost like tears. A pup, he breathed. We're having a pup. We're having a pup, Catherine confirmed, laughing as he swept her into his arms, spinning her around with a shout of pure happiness. I love you, Alexander said, setting her down carefully, reverently. I love you so much, Catherine. Thank you for this, for everything, for choosing me, for being my mate, for giving me a family. I love you too, Catherine replied, tears of joy streaming down her face. Thank you for finding me, for protecting me, for showing me what real love looks like." They stood there in the moonlight, wrapped in each other's arms. The bond between them golden and strong and eternal. Behind them, the settlement celebrated, their pack safe and happy and whole. Catherine had run from her fate once, terrified and alone. She'd thought safety meant isolation, freedom meant solitude, but she'd been wrong. True safety came from trust. True freedom came from choosing your own path. And home wasn't a place, it was a person. An alpha king who'd knocked on her door and changed everything. "What are you thinking?" Alexander asked, sensing her emotions through the bond. "That I'm glad I opened the door," Catherine said. "That day in the cottage. I almost didn't, you know. Almost stayed hidden inside, too afraid to face you." "I would have waited," Alexander said, "however long it took. Because even then, before I knew about the bond, something told me you were worth waiting for." "Well, you don't have to wait anymore." Catherine placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our future is right here, growing, real." Alexander's eyes shone with emotion. "I promise I'll be a good father, better than mine was. I'll protect them, teach them, love them." "I know you will," Catherine interrupted gently, "because you're already the best mate I could ask for. You'll be an amazing father, too." They stayed there until the moon climbed high, talking about baby names and nursery plans and how to tell Isabella before she figured it out herself. Making plans for a future Catherine had never dreamed possible. A year ago, she'd been running, terrified, alone. Now she is home, safe, loved. And it had all started with a knock on her door. The end closing. And there we have it. My incredible listeners, the story of Catherine and Alexander, the runaway Omega who thought she was safe, and the Alpha King who showed her what true safety really means. Sometimes the thing we're running from isn't the real danger. Sometimes we're running from the very thing that could save us, heal us, make us whole. Catherine had every reason to fear alphas, to protect her heart, to choose isolation over risk. But she was brave enough to open that door, brave enough to trust, brave enough to choose love even when everything in her past told her not to. And Alexander, he could have been just another controlling alpha, using his power to take what he wanted. Instead, he showed up with patience, with respect, with the understanding that real love requires choice. He gave Catherine time, gave her space, proved himself worthy before ever asking her to accept him. That's what real mates do. They don't force, they don't demand, they show up consistently, honestly, and they wait for you to be ready to let them in. If you loved this story, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it Catherine facing down the rogue? Alexander defending her at the tribunal? Their first kiss? I want to hear from you. And subscribe, my beautiful pack, because we've got more stories coming. More shifters, more romance, more danger and destiny and love that defies the odds. I drop these daily because I know you need your fix of supernatural romance. To my loyal crew who's been here from the beginning, you're the real ones. You make this channel possible. Your support, your comments, your enthusiasm, it's everything. Until tomorrow night, when we howl at the moon together again, sweet dreams, and may you find your own fated mate who's willing to knock on your door and wait for you to be ready. This is your host, signing off. Stay wild, stay brave, and remember, sometimes the thing chasing you is exactly what you need to stop running.